Welcome everyone to this episode of Taking It to the Bridge. Avopod's Taking It to the Bridge, where we're both some 50-year-old something men, because I'm 50-something.
And I'm 50-something.
And I think between the two of us,
we know a little something.
We know just a little something. So hopefully something will get passed on to you. We are honored today to have our guest on, Mike.
Kevin Lambert, Dr. Kevin Lambert.
Dr. Kevin Lambert. I read through his bio. It took me about 5 minutes.
Right.
He's got a lot of stuff on there, man, and it's great. And even I was reading it in front of my daughter, and she's a psychology degree holder from LSU now. She was like, "Wow."
Yeah.
She's like, "Wow."
Impressive.
Cool. It's very, very impressive. So we have Dr. Kevin Lambert on the show with us today, especially in the midst of Mental Health Awareness Month. We thought this would be a good opportunity. Dr. Kevin Lambert is a Texas licensed psychologist with a sincere passion for developing others and fostering healthier and happier relationships. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Illinois State University, a MA and a psychology doctorate degree in clinical psychology from Spalding University School of Professional Psychology. He also received his MBA degree from SMU's Cox School of Business, where he was recognized as a distinguished business leader and member of the Dean Circle. Dr. Lambert is the founder of Great Life Counseling Center, and his unique style of intervention has been described by clients as genuine, warm, respectful, innovative, fun, enlightening, and appropriately challenging. It's great to have him on. Dr. Lambert, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you on here, sir. I really do feel it's an honor. Especially in the midst of, as I mentioned, Mental Health Awareness Month. So I know we're ready to start pummeling you with questions. I hope you had your coffee. We are going to jump right in here.
All right. So Kevin, again, thank you for joining us today. We hear this all the time. Historically, the Black community hasn't really embraced counseling and therapy. And instead, we have kind of used or turned to the church to help us cope with mental and emotional issues. But here recently, we hear that there has been a shift, and we don't know if it's due to the pandemic or generational changes, but it seems we are now embracing those services more, especially amongst younger people, millennials and Gen Z. So my question is, during that same period, the church's attendance has been decreasing. And I got me to thinking, is there a correlation between decreased church attendance and more acceptance of counseling services in the Black community, especially among the younger generation? And is counseling and therapy and all of that, in your opinion, is that becoming the new sanctuary, if you want to call it that, for the younger generations?
Well, I would say that I wouldn't say, short answer, I wouldn't say that they're related, because I think that a lot of the attendance is more due to the pandemic and technology. And I'll explain that in regards to, I think that the trends that we've seen in the church, the challenge that we've had is that the church, especially if you're talking about Gen Zers, but I think even just for us seasoned folks,
you're a youngster.
It's a little bit, it's a matter of convenience. If I can do, TV church has been trending, my man Joel Osteen, that's how he's, made extra bread, in terms of beyond his big stadium church. He's got people that follow him all over the country because they just can, turn on the TV and watch him in the morning. And there's so many other, great just speakers, and pastors, just being able to project their personalities over the screen. And so people have gotten more and more accustomed to just wanting that access and wanting that convenience. But then you add to that the pandemic, which has made it where the church doors have essentially had to be closed for the most part. and not all pastors and all preachers have been able to do that as effectively as others. And so that also has deeply impacted. And now what we've also seen as a result, and what's been good for my business, to a large extent, is just the people being isolated and at home has also caused them to reconsider their position possibly on, seeking mental health services and seeking support. I've had a lot of not just Gen Zers, but even those of the seasoned generations.
I like how he keeps trying to avoid insulting us by saying seasoned.
Right. You can call us old. It's okay.
50-something. It's okay.
I've had a lot of my older clients reaching back out and saying, like, this has been rough and I need a point of contact. I need somebody to talk to. And, marriages have been challenged, and, kids, parents dealing with kids at home from school and trying to homeschool. And I tell you, man, my wife and I, we were like, we ain't set up this way. She's got a career. I got a career. Like, these kids, like, I need you to help me with my geometry and my English and
that new math.
Like, we ain't set up for that. So,
right.
Just making some of those hard decisions and all that comes with, you have they call it the racial pandemic right now. So you have all of the different things that have also been going on top of that I think that has been pushing people to seek refuge in therapy from the standpoint of wanting some support and guidance. And I don't think that the Sunday sermon is always going to address that well enough for the individual or even for the family all the time, and you also have different pastors in terms of how much they're willing to like really go in on that.
Right.
In terms of being able to provide the practical, I kind of see a lot of my work as kind of very pastoral in nature. I consider it a pastoral ministry in the sense that we are doing soul care. And we're trying to help people to walk out their faith versus being preached to. They're coming to us with their theology, with their notions of who God is and who he isn't and what this means, and trying to sort of figure stuff out.
Right.
And just to have somebody to first and foremost to hear them and for make sure that they're heard and supported, but then also to challenge them to reconsider their position when it's not healthy.
Right. So let me ask you this, because you brought up two things that were actually individual questions that I had, but I'm going to put them together. You brought up race and you brought up the pandemic. Now, I read the interesting chapter in a book called The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health. I forget the author's name right now. And where it talked about phobias. And it talked about how there's studies that show that blacks tend to have more phobias. And that could be generational. But during this pandemic, would that be something that you may have seen? Was there an uptick in minority clients for you, or the specific things that are affecting people?
I think being a minority, I tend to attract more minorities to want somebody that looks like them, that they feel like can relate and so I mean, in my center my team is a very diverse team. We have, different docs of different backgrounds and racial, sexual orientation, everything, right? So we have a very diverse team. And the goal behind that is to basically offer something for everybody, where we've got, in addition to clinical expertise, top-notch clinical expertise, but we also have people that on a personal level, I can relate to what it's like to be dealing with some of those real life things, to sort of hopefully create a more genuine and authentic connection. But I would say the racial pandemic has probably encouraged, has probably created an uptick in regards to people of color seeking services because they're being charged and triggered by the things that they're seeing in the media.
Right.
The impact of COVID impacting people of color much more than non like white folks, you know what I mean? So the fear, or maybe better term, I would say the anxiety around these things is valid. It's definitely not, coming from nowhere. I think if you also think about in terms of the statistic that you were talking about with increased like more phobias among Black folks or people of color makes sense to me when I take it into the context of history and some of the things that we've experienced, the traumas that we've experienced, the traumas that we hear from the stories from our ancestors or elders, if you will, that have been passed down and give us reason to want to be very cautious and, just very leery of the risks that we take. It also kind of makes me proud, though, that in spite of all of those things that we continue to push forward and continue to try to be better. That to me, whenever I see accomplishments and barriers broken, like our vice president, I mean, it's like, man, like we just keep doing it, like keep going.
Yeah.
Keep breaking barriers. Like despite all of that, like we keep doing it.
Right. And I have 2 daughters, so, you can say anything you want about her past achievements or whatever, but just having a woman that close to the presidency, influential woman, Black woman that close to the presidency, having 2 daughters, that was a proud moment for me.
Yeah. So Kevin,
daughters too, so I feel you.
Yeah.
Ken and I both know you. We actually all attend the same church. I'm not going to name the church, but we do attend the same church. So knowing that you are a man of faith, is your practice openly Christian, or is that something that upon request you can cater your therapy to that person if that's something that they're seeking?
Yes. So the latter more so. We, obviously I'm the owner, I'm the leader. And so everything that I do and everything that I create is done, based on the inspiration and based upon, the integrity that I feel that God would want me to have. And, we hire people first and foremost. We're a family practice. So our mission is to serve families, to help them to live healthier, happier lives. And we work with a lot of individuals in lieu of that pursuit. So our secondary kind of specialty is dealing with trauma. And so we also are a group of psychologists, for the most part, all but one, or maybe even like some of the practicum students, they're pursuing a doctorate degree, but they don't have it just yet. But our identity is being a group of psychologists. So when I go to hire someone, I'm looking for someone who has a doctorate degree or is in pursuit of a doctorate. And then I'm looking for someone that has a interest in specialty in working with couples or kids, so that they can help serve the mission of us as a team trying to serve families and create a one-stop shop for families to be able to come and get those needs met. And it's always nice when I learn that they are Christian or, and a believer. Personally, that's always nice to have. I do have members of my team that do profess Christ, and I have a few that don't. that have different belief systems. I would say the majority of them do, but but I don't, not hire because of that. Because I think that we have other members of the community. One of my specialties is working with clergy, and I work with faith leaders, rabbis, and people of different faiths, and that's a work I really enjoy. Just connecting on just being people of faith.
Right.
There's a common thread and a kind of a code, like that moral code that we share. That's fun to explore and talk about.
Right.
So when people come to us, if they express that that's something that's important to them, I will try to connect them with someone who shares that lens, because it's also language too. So a lot of times if I get someone from our church, I'm going to put them with somebody, especially if I have any idea that's going to be really important to them, I'll assign them to someone that I know is going to be able to speak their language when they're talking about or referencing scripture, or they're talking about that sort of thing, for them to be able to know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of my people are trained to be sensitive to people's faith and supportive, but they may not be able to follow. So that means the client might need to educate that clinician a little bit more on kind of what they mean. But none of us went to seminary school, so we can't provide Christian counseling per se. But it is, you have like basically a well-qualified, I would consider myself a family psychologist who also personally is a man that's devout about his faith.
Great. You mentioned, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned young folk, working with young folk. And one of the things that inspired us to do the show is our aspiration to bridge the gaps between our generation, baby boomers, and Gen Z, millennials, and so forth. So much we don't understand, so much we don't, know, recognize. We speak different languages, different technologies, and so forth. And you mentioned that part of your practice is working with young folks. Have you seen differences in what affects adults as to what affects young people specifically during this pandemic?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're talking about Gen Zers, when you say young folks, I mean, I think that, I have some Gen Z, at least one in my house. I think my baby girl might be like Gen Y. I think is that the next one?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think so.
Yeah, but they have about a 4-year age gap, and I think my oldest just barely makes the cut for the Gen Zers. But just hearing some of the things that she's experiencing and seeing, especially us going through the election cycle, just seeing it through her eyes and seeing her having a lot of questions, and just, there's a lot of confusion, just not understanding like why people are reacting, and, just all of the conflict, and then seeing things on the news, or hearing, her mom and I talking about just some of the things that we're noticing that's going on with, Ahmaud Arbery, and, just the countless different, folks that have been victims of police brutality and violence. It's while she's studying American history in the 8th grade,
Whose history?
right, and learning about slavery and learning about the Civil War, and I think that they're seeing a lot of stuff brand new compared to the older generation, right? And they're kind of really curious, but also a little confused, because it's like,
right,
like, why can't y'all just let it go? Why does it have to be all this?
And if our Texas government has its say, it'll be banned from history teaching. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got Governor Abbott just recently said, well, you don't have, you can't make people wear their masks at school. So, I mean, my kids, we were on them like, look, if you're gonna go to school, you gotta wear your mask, you gotta be careful, and this is not about you. This is about your grandparents. This is about other people. Like this is, and so to see the leader of their state like step out and say, we're not gonna do that anymore. They're like, what happened to caring about people?
Right.
What about taking extra precautions to make sure we're safe? Like, what's
Right,
up with that?
right.
And I think the challenge that we have as parents is trying to explain the politics and the reasons that he might have, but it's like, I got nothing for you, kid.
Right. Right.
Well, I talked with someone the other day who has a 15-year-old. And one of the concerns that they have, especially with the pandemic, is their child was already a little antisocial. I mean, that has a negative connotation. They were just kind of withdrawn to themselves and so forth. And she feels like her 15-year-old is now even more so because of the pandemic, even to the point where she thinks there may be some depression there or anxiety. And how do we tell parents, or how would you, not trying to get free advice here, but how would you tell parents, what to look out for, how to identify things like that?
Electronics. How much time are they spending on their phones, on video games? I mean, that is a challenge that we have sometimes with our girls in terms of just making sure that they're staying active and limiting their time on screens, period. And I would say that, the adults have to the example. It's one thing to tell your kids to get off the screens and another thing for them to see that, because they're going to do what they see more than they're going to do what they hear. And so, but are you willing to do it with him? Referencing the 15-year-old, I would, if he really has a hard time socializing, if he really has a hard time, like not being aloof or withdrawn, then I might want to use my relationship with him to try to like require him to interact with me and let's go do something that's active, that's social. Even if it's just the two of us, to just sort of start working on building that by brick by brick. So it's just going to be me and you, and it might be me, you, and someone else. And maybe we might have like a friend, or we might kind of create some sort of situation where you're in a social situation with me kind of not too far away to kind of provide some support, so that when you kind of want to shy away, I can just kick you back and play, and kind of coach you, to kind of like sit in that, because I think the reality is that people aren't robots. So I give my daughters, especially my 13-year-old, I give her strategies on how to deal with certain situations that she'll come home and tell me about, and talk about how she could have responded to it differently. And the stuff that I give her, I know it will work most of the time, but I can't promise that it will work every time, because you don't know how people are going to react and respond. And so I say, well, okay, but here's the decision tree. Like if they do this, then you need to do this. And if they say this, then you need to come back with that. And in some situations, you just need to just be like, okay, dude, like whatever, and just move it on. Cause it's not worth going back and forth and trying to make, because I'm not there, she's got to learn how to build that discernment and that ability to make that judgment. So while I give her those strategies to help her to navigate those situations, and I probably got to go into my prayer closet and go, God, please guide her, to help her to use that stuff so it doesn't look, so she doesn't come back and be like, you told me, and that was a disaster.
Funny how they do that, right?
Right.
But you said.
Right.
But every now and then, I mean, you just got to pull out the parent card, right?
Right.
Don't do what I do.
Don't worry about all of that.
Do what I say.
Right.
So Kevin,
Yeah.
I got a few single friends that have had it particularly rough during the pandemic because they're single. Now they're isolated.
You talking about me, Mike?
I'm not talking about you, bro.
Okay.
You good.
All right. Leave me off the couch this time, okay?
Right.
All right. I'm not getting on the couch.
That's the next show. But my question is, how do you, okay, if I'm a single person, I live alone, I've been quarantined for a year, even though we're coming out of that right now.
Hopefully.
How do I identify that I need help when I'm in the midst of dealing with depression or anxiety, but I might not understand that that's what's happening?
Right.
So for single people in those situations, what is your advice to them until we can begin socializing again? How do people do that?
That doesn't include alcohol.
Right. Or, other things.
Actually, I have a handful of people on my caseload personally, and I know even more of them throughout my practice that are being served by other docs on my team that are in counseling right now, weekly or biweekly, just as a touch point to have someone to talk to through this time. And it's clinically relevant because if they didn't have their therapist, they would get very depressed because we're social beings. We're not designed to be alone. You know what I mean? And so even if you're an introvert, that time being like to yourself and to your, with your own thoughts is, usually eventually gets really unhealthy. And so I've polled people and had some fun with that in regards to noticing that a lot of the introverts are like, I'm good. Office, I don't have to deal with people.
Right.
They're like happy. But even those introverts, as time has gone on, have a lot of them have experienced just, that withdrawal and that lack of connection and a deficit in regards to just having someone to kind of provide that emotional support.
Right.
And so therapy is one way to do that in regards to, although a lot of therapists are experiencing high volumes right now, so it may take a little while to get in with the really good ones. But the other alternative is to just try to connect with friends as much as possible, to, create, there's all kinds of chat groups and different types of stuff like that, but just trying to get that social interaction virtually, I would strongly recommend that just so that you're not, to yourself too long.
Right.
And I'd say trying to take steps to give yourself promise of light at the end of the tunnel, whether it be if you're, getting the vaccine so that you don't have to worry about it, your body having such a, don't have to live in so much fear of your body having a bad reaction to getting COVID, or and then maybe you can start taking some baby steps towards getting out of the house a little bit more.
Right. Because I was actually like that in the beginning. I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't got to deal with no one. I don't got to constantly watch what I say, watch what I do.
Get everything delivered.
I just get up, put on my flip flops and my shorts and a dress shirt, and I'm cool. But as time went on, the words of the great philosopher Luther Vandross kept coming to mind. I'm not meant to be alone.
Oh Lord.
Anyway, let me not go there.
But we tend to forget isolation is used as punishment in prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself why.
Wow. That's a good
if
one.
being isolated was cool, prisons wouldn't do that. You know?
That's true. Very true.
And
Very true.
and I'm like you. I was like, I don't have to see anybody.
Right.
Got my Amazon. I got my
Right.
DoorDash. I'm good. But then as time went on, I found myself once a week just crying out of the blue.
Really?
Yeah.
Can we explore that a little more, Mike?
No, I'm gonna have to make an appointment with
Let me
Kevin.
make an appointment. Okay.
Yeah, man. I need to unpack some stuff. I can see a coffee commercial and just break down.
Well, so for you, for me, it's frustration.
Right.
It's like every 72 hours or so, I like get tense.
Right.
Like, like I should be doing more, or something else I need to be doing. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Kevin, if you could rank some of the situations you're treating in your practice, what would be like the top 3 things people